I want to use ribbon as a closure for my journal. So I have here 2 pieces of ribbon, and each one is about 14 inches long. I will first mark where exactly I need the ribbon to be attached, and this mark is at 3 7/8 of an inch away from the top and the bottom of the journal cover. To make sure that the ribbon looks nice on the back, as I will not be covering it with anything, unlike on the front of the cover where I will use some of the cut out pieces from the paper collection to embellish the front of the cover. On the back of the cover I will not be using anything, so I will just fold the ribbon like that and add some glue here to hold it together, and then I will add glue to the cover itself. Add my ribbon on top. Leave it to dry for a while, because as you can see, the glue is still wet and the ribbon just keeps unfolding. But once it's dry, you will be able to poke 2 holes and I'm being gentle because I don't want to move that ribbon from its place. And then I will just put the brad through 1 hole and through the 2nd hole, and then I will flatten the tails of the brads at the back like this. So this ribbon is attached securely to the cover here, and on the front, since I plan to, as I mentioned before, to use some die cut pieces here and add them to the front of the cover, I think I will just have to glue the ribbon here, and then I will cover the end of it with some paper pieces. It will look fine. Okay, so I also marked the middle. In there I will add the glue and do the same procedure. Use the brads for attaching the ribbon. Okay, so that's how it looks so far. To the ribbon tails here, I've added some ribbon ends and charms. I think it looks cute. So the ribbon ends come in different sizes. These are the sizes that I happen to have, but in order to put them on the end of the ribbon or leather or any other material that you might want to use or you might have, you just put it on the end and then use your flat nose pliers in order to squeeze this piece really tight on top of your material. On the inside of the front cover, I want to create kind of a pocket to hold little pieces of ephemera that I want to create further on as well. To create the pocket, I first printed out one of the pages that I liked for this purpose, and I printed it on cardstock. I will need a piece that measures 4 3/4 by 7.5. I distressed the edges of this paper using Vintage Photo Distress ink. Next, we will need a few pieces of another cardstock of your choice, and I'm using this dark green. So I have here 3 pieces, and they measure as follows. One is 7.5 by 3 1/4, and you will score it along the long side at 1 inch and 1 1/4. And 2 additional cardstock pieces should measure 3 1/4 by 4 3/4, and you will score them along the long side at 1 inch and 1 1/4 inch as well. Both of them scored identically, measure the same. Okay, and then I just used my corner rounder to round the corners of all these 3 pieces, and I matted them with the designer paper from the Discover the Woods project pack as well. So once again, I just printed the design that I liked on the 110 pounds white cardstock and trimmed the pieces that I needed to the size. So for this long piece, you will need the paper measuring 1 7/8 by 7 3/8. And for both of these, you will need a piece of cardstock measuring 1 7/8 by 4 5/8. Of course, you will use your corner rounder in case you did that for the first set of the cardstock pieces, and then you will glue them down on top to get the parts of our pocket. Next, I will take this paper piece and I will start to attach the flaps to it. I will begin actually with the longer one, and you can use either wet glue or dry adhesive for this. I will go with the wet glue. I will adhere these flaps to the paper piece that I have prepared. The long one first. I am not overlapping the score line that I have there. Let me show this to you. That's how it looks on the side. Okay. In the same manner, I'm going to glue the short flaps. Okay. Burnish. So this piece will go, and I think you will be way more comfortable gluing it down if you fold everything flat. All the flaps, if they're flat, it will be way easier to glue the whole element down to the inside of your front cover. So that's what I'm going to do now. You can either use wet glue or use your score tape maybe to go around the edges and then add the wet glue in the middle of the page. I think that's what I'm going to do. Here we go. Now I will try to position it in the center of the cover and then press to make sure that it sticks good. So our pocket is done. That's how our notebook looks like. We will also add an envelope to the inside of the back cover. You will need a piece of cardstock, and I'm using the same green cardstock for this. It measures 8 1/8 by 7.5, and you will score it at 1/2 inch, 5/8, 5 3/8, and 5 5/8. And as you can see, I rounded the corners of the flap and also used the score tape to apply on the back of this cardstock piece. This is where it will be attached to the back cover, like that. So a few more things that we need to make before we attach this piece are these. You will need 2 additional pieces of green cardstock, and in my case they measure 2 inches by 3 7/8, and each of them is scored at every 1/2 inch on the short side. 1/2 inch, 1 inch, 1.5. The same scoring goes for this piece. I will set them aside for now. We don't need the scoreboard anymore. So let's get back to this piece. We have a 1/2 inch flap on the side here. We're going to attach a piece of pattern paper, and this is the leftover piece from the page that I printed before and used on the front cover here. So that leftover piece will have to be trimmed to be 7.5 by 4 inches. And you are going to take this piece, apply glue to the 1/2 inch flap, to this area here. You will glue the pattern paper to that 1/2 inch flap. Try not to overlap the fold line. Okay, like that. Then on the back, I have marked a place for the hole because I want to add string closure to this pocket here. Okay, so before we assemble the pocket, we want to put one of the circles. My circle will be 1 1/4 inch away from either first score line on the green cardstock piece or 1 1/4 inch away from the edge of the cardstock. But since we already glued it down, you might want to measure that 1 1/4 inch from the score line on your green cardstock. Okay, so you will create a guideline just like that, and then the second guideline will be 3 3/4 of an inch away from either top or bottom of this paper piece. And then at the intersection of those lines, you will poke a hole and take one of your circles. Take a brad. Doesn't have to be a big one. Just a tiny brad is fine. You will put a brad through the hole in your circle and then attach it to the paper piece. Open, unfold the paper, and flatten the tails of the brad like so. Perfect. Next, we will take the cardstock pieces that we prepared before. We will fold them to get the shape of the letter W. Okay, and then we will attach them to the pattern paper like so, aligning them with the outer edge of the paper. So you can use, once again, score tape or the wet glue. It's your personal preference. Go ahead and do it the way you feel more comfortable. This is what we have. Okay, the same thing at the bottom. That's what we have so far. You can now go ahead and glue this down. So I will apply glue to the flaps. And once again, I will keep them folded. And we'll make sure that I have a straight edge here on the left hand side, and here as well, and I will burnish. So basically that 1/8 of an inch gasset that we have created is for the thickness of these expandable flaps. Okay, great. Now we can continue. So to embellish the flap on the right hand side, we will need a piece of pattern paper, and this is also the paper from the project pack, Discover the Woods, of course. It measures 2 3/8 by 7 3/8, and I have also rounded the corners on one side of this paper piece. So before we glue this piece down, we want to attach the second circle. And I have already marked the place where that circle needs to be. It's about slightly over 3/4 of an inch from this edge, with the one with the rounded corners. And of course it's in the middle of the paper, so if you want to know where the middle is, you just lightly fold this piece like so and pinch the paper, and then right there you draw a guideline that will help you determine where exactly the middle is, and then you just poke a hole. Take the second circle that you have, put the brad in, put it through the paper, flatten the tails of the brad, and now I want to add the string. So this string is, let's see, I think about 15 inches in my case, but I don't think I will need the whole length. So if you have a shorter string, that is also fine. So I will just tie a knot here to secure it in place. And I will cut this piece off. Okay. Now we are ready to glue this down to the flap. Just center it. There will be a little border all around. And this is our second envelope. can close it. And we can also add charm to the end of the string here, just for some added interest. Now we are ready to glue this whole envelope down to the inside of our back cover. I already have the score tape applied, and I just need to add wet glue and glue it down to the cover. Okay, so once again, make sure that you center your envelope and leave borders all around. And then we just have to press tight and glue the envelope securely down to the page. Okay, that's our journal. Now, for a second, I would like to get back to the tracing paper pockets in our ephemera holder here. Sadly, even after my glue dried, with this tracing paper, it behaved really strange, and you can still see it. It didn't dry completely clear. That's why I decided to cover the edges of the pockets. I took this gold cardstock, and on the back of it I applied a few strips of 1/4 inch score tape. Not because you can't use another width, but because this is what I have in my stash. So I ran it 4 times and got a few strips of that gold cardstock using my paper trimmer. Now I will just need to trim it down to the needed size and to apply it along the edges of the pockets. And this way I will cover those places where the glue can be seen. I like it better this way, definitely. I think it adds a lot of interest to the pockets. You can add a strip at the top of the pocket too, but I thought I will stop here. Next, I want us to embellish the cover, and before we do that, I want to talk about a few things. There are a few elements that you can cut out, and they are included in the kit on the pages with the white background. And there are also other images that are used on the pages, and I felt like I wanted to use them in my notebook as separate cut out elements as well. Like, for example, this camera, or a few acorns, or a few mushrooms here and there. So let me show you what I did in order to get them. Of course, you can go ahead and print each page with the design that you like twice. Let me just explain what exactly I mean. Let's say this owl here. This owl was part of the page that you can see on the screen, and I could go ahead and print the whole page, which would mean that I needed to use a lot of ink to print it, and at the end, I only wanted to use the owl for the second time. I mean, of course, I print the page and use it in my journal, but I want the owl to be separate and to use it on my cover, for example. So I went ahead and opened the image in the Painter. Painter is an app which comes with your Windows. I'm sorry, but I don't know how Mac users are working. I don't have a Mac, so I can only explain what you can do if you're a Windows user. So you open the image that you like or the page that you like in Paint and use the selection tool to select the image that interests you on the page, and then copy and paste it into Word, a new document in Word, resize it in Word the way you want. And that's how I got a page of different elements from all the other pages from the project pack that I wanted to use more in my notebook. As a matter of fact, I did this whole thing in Photoshop. That's why you see rough outlines around the images, which are the backgrounds from where those images came. And if you are doing it with Paint, you will just have rectangular backgrounds around your images. So that's just something that might help you not to waste your ink and print for the second time only the images that specifically interest you and you want to use them more in your journal. That's what I have right here. These are all the images that I felt I wanted to use more than once in my journal. I went ahead and used my scissors to cut them out very close to the outline of the image itself, getting rid of the background that obviously I didn't need. Let's get back to this camera that I really liked and wanted to use on the front of my notebook cover. I cut it out and used my circle punch to punch the opening in the camera, and then I used a punch of a bigger size to create a few circles and then glue them together and make a shaker. I also, of course, added a piece of acetate that will hold the filling of the shaker here. And for some added interest, I used a few brads for creating the buttons on the camera. Then I went ahead and layered a few images together to create this cluster here that I'm going to use on my front cover. I also created the little label, Discover the Woods, layered it with a piece of fabric, and added a die-cut leaf. That's what I have right now, and let me go ahead and glue this down to my journal cover. Since the back of this element is not flat because of the shaker, I will use pieces of medium weight chipboard to add to the back of this image cluster and then glue it down to the front cover. I have a ton of leftover chipboard pieces, so that's a good way of utilizing them. So basically I'm just checking what's the size of the chipboard piece that I need, cut it down, and then I will glue them down to the back of the images. Depending on the thickness of the shaker that you created, as well as the thickness of the chipboard that you are using, you might need to repeat this step one more time. And make sure that it's all even once you glue the element to the page. I will add some glossy accents here and there to the mushrooms and maybe acorns, or maybe add some gold splashes later on the cover, but this is how it looks. Next, I will take all the cards that come with the kit and I will use the cutout elements to create additional ephemera pieces to go into my journal. I think I will speed forward this part of the tutorial and see you once I'm done. There are just a couple of pieces left, so I think we can put it together with these cards here in our ephemera holder. That's what's it for. And I also glued down a few little pieces that were left from the cutouts to the pockets. That's what I have left. And I think I do want this washi strip here on the flap of the envelope. And this bag, I don't know, maybe it will find its place somewhere here in the pocket. Yeah, I think that looks fine. So I will glue them down. I added a piece of real washi here next to the faux washi, just to create some contrast. And this is how we used every single piece of the kit, and even created some additional items on our own. I hope you like that tutorial, and I really hope that you will check the project pack from Vectoria Designs. They have a ton of different images. I'm a huge fan. Thank you very much for watching and staying with me today. Have a great rest of your day, and bye. See you soon.